But first, oh, such fine speeches in Parliament today about the Bondi massacre. And tears too from Labor politicians who said too little about the lethal Jew hatred in this country until it was all too late and 15 people had been shot dead.
For every person murdered, there are families and friends left behind, a home left quieter, clothes still hanging in wardrobes, photos on walls that will never be updated.
More action yesterday might have spared us some tears today. And when I listened to all those fine speeches in Parliament, I thought, no bloody wonder. No wonder the shock polls today showing one nation soaring and the big two parties falling. Like, hey, big surprise, Australians have lost all confidence in politics as usual. There was a Newspoll today showing Pauline Hanson's One Nation now polling even more than the coalition for the first time ever. 22% to 21. Extraordinary figures. And not that far behind Labor either, which has dropped 4 points to a miserable 32%. Now, this poll spells death for the leadership of Sussan Ley, although another poll on the same day says not so fast. The Resolve poll was totally different. Yes, it also had One Nation at record levels, 18%, but it was still a long way behind Sussan Ley's coalition on 28%. With Labor's primary vote sinking to 30%. In fact, after preferences in that poll, the coalition has in fact slashed Labor's lead to just 4 points. So who really knows what's going on? Except one thing is clear. The Albanese government's handling of the Bondi massacre has been a disaster. And support for One Nation just keeps growing, even though leader Pauline Hanson was still banned today from sitting in the Senate, after the big party suspended her last time for a week of sittings for dressing up in a burqa in protest at being stopped from speaking about banning the burqa. Figure that out. And what a backfire that was, that ban on her. It just advertised the fact that it's Hanson who most clearly speaks against the kind of hatred, the more extreme forms of Islam, that allegedly drove the two Bondi killers. And she did it again today.
I have been someone who stood my ground over the years, that a lot of things that I've said and done over the years has now happened in our country. Why do you think what's happened in Bondi? Do you think it was by chance? You know, to criticise this, and it is about Islam. It is about the people that we brought into the country. They're not people compatible and suitable for this country. Why do we now have to turn around and make laws to start reining them in? Why don't we look at these people before we allow them into our country?
And backing Hanson up today was a new recruit, Barnaby Joyce, the former Nationals MP and Deputy Prime Minister, whose defection to One Nation has given that party more credibility. And he nailed the problem with all those fine speeches today.
It is ridiculous to say it's got nothing to do with radical Islam. It quite evidently, self-evidently is something to do with radical Islam. And I tell you what is terrible. If that condolence motion just stops in there, everybody saying empathy, everyone saying sorry, and that all has to be said. But if there's no action that follows that, if that's where it stops, then what was the purpose of that, apart from sort of some empathetic self-aggrandisement? You actually have to come out from there and say something went terribly wrong, and we are going to have to do something about it.
What a contrast to the Prime Minister, who in Parliament said the gunmen were instead inspired by the Islamic State, as if that's completely different from Islam.
Terrorists, inspired by ISIS, murdered our citizens on our soil.
The opposition leader today was much closer to the truth.
Anti-Semitic hate fuelled the terrorists on December the 14th, but it came out of the shadows in October 2023. It walked our streets. It marched over our bridges. It took over our landmarks. It camped in university quadrangles. It painted graffiti on our buildings. It firebombed our places of worship. We must face uncomfortable truths. Radical Islamist extremism caused this. I repeat, radical Islamist extremism caused this. Leaders need to be able to express this clearly, because if you can't name the problem, you can't possibly defeat it.
And in fact, it's the government's fear of criticising Islam, a fear of then concluding, well, Islamic immigration must therefore be limited, that may explain why the bill it wants Parliament to pass this week to fight this Jew hatred is still badly flawed. Now, this bill includes one section which the government says will give it more power to ban groups spreading Jew hatred. Here's the Prime Minister this morning singling out two such groups he wants to hit with these new laws, Hizb ut-Tahrir and a neo-Nazi group to show Muslim voters is after white guys as well.
The other laws go to migration, but also provisions as well about organisations such as the neo-Nazi organisations and Hizb ut-Tahrir and other organisations that promote hate to be able to give the authorities the power to deal with them.
Now, already there's a huge problem here, which shows just what we're up against. Australia's top Muslim organisation, the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils, has joined a Hizb ut-Tahrir, Media Front and 22 other Muslim groups to say, no, don't ban Hizb ut-Tahrir. Ban Jewish groups instead. It said banning Hizb ut-Tahrir under the pretext of hate is wrong and misleading. We cannot ignore the genocide in Gaza, which pro-Zionist advocates have spent the last 2 years defending. If hate speech really is a crime, then the words of pro-Zionist advocates who have provided a cover for genocide should first be prosecuted. Now, two things make that statement frightening. First, our top Muslim group thinks if any hate preachers should be banned after the Bondi massacre of Jews, they should be Jewish groups, Zionists. And second, it defends Hizb ut-Tahrir, which, as I've warned for more than a decade, has preached Jew hatred here with no government, coalition or Labor doing a real thing about it. Let me play you just some of the things Hizb ut-Tahrir spokesmen have said.
Even if a single bomb went off in this country, even if 1,000 bombs went off in this country, all that it will prove is that the Muslims are angry. And they have every reason to be angry.
الفساد الأخلاقي مربوط بين يهود أفسدوا الدنيا بما يسمى بالفن والسينما والأفلام الفاسدة بنو إسرائيل أفسدوا الدنيا بتجارة الجنس أفسدوا الدنيا بتجارة المخدرات أفسدوا الدنيا بانحطاط الأخلاق أفسدوا الدنيا في كل شيء. We'll liberate Palestine. We'll liberate Palestine. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. خيبر خيبر يا يهود. اللهم ولفنا رقاب اليهود. دمر دمر اليهود. دمر دمر اليهود.
One of the most important moments that we see captured here today is the unity of the Muslims, tens of thousands of them walking on this bridge for the first time ever in this country, in the most iconic location in this country, walking together, chanting for a free Palestine on an Islamic basis, on the basis that our blood and their blood is one, our struggle and their struggle is one, our war and their war is one.
And this group is defended by our top Muslim organisation, an umbrella group of Muslim organisations, which says don't ban it. Ban Jewish groups instead, Zionist groups. But here's the thing. I don't think the Albanese government's bill as it stands will ban this group. The government's fact sheet says to be listed as a prohibited hate group. The organisation, in this case Hizb ut-Tahrir, has either engaged in, prepared, planned or assisted in a hate crime relating to race, national or ethnic origin. Or it's advocated hate crimes, again, relating to race, national or ethnic origin. And I should point out here that Hizb ut-Tahrir does not spread hate relating to race, national or ethnic origin. It spreads a hate relating to a religion, Judaism. I mean, what race or nation or ethnicity are the Jews? I've met European ones, I've met African ones, Australian ones. I've even met a Jewish convert from India. But of course, if this bill includes hate against religion, before you know it, you've got left-wing judges who'll be jailing people who say Islam is a problem. And indeed, it would seem to many people that extreme Islam is just that, given the number of Islamist attacks and the hate preaching the kind I've just shown you. Now, I worry that the definition of hate crime in this bill is It may not be actually strong enough to get Hizb ut-Tahrir banned, if that's what you want, if that's what the Prime Minister is promising. Because that organisation is usually clever enough to stop short of saying, and therefore go out and kill. So maybe the bill should include a tougher definition, one that was suggested today by Mike Pizzulo, who's former head of the Immigration Department, that to be listed as a prohibited hate group, that group might just have to refuse to condemn terrorist attacks in pursuit of its cause. And that would surely catch out Hizb ut-Tahrir, which cannot bring itself to condemn even the Islamic State beheading civilians.
Why will you not point
blank
condemn the actions of IS
because
fighters?
The question itself is
men
offensive.
Who cut
But when you see all this hate preaching and the Australian Islamic Federation of Islamic Council defending these hate preachers, you've got to realise that speech itself is not the real issue here. It's what drives that speech and the people who believe that stuff, silent though they may be. And for once, Hizb ut-Tahrir puts that well, saying that Hizb ut-Tahrir is a set of ideas rooted in Islam. Unless the government is proposing to ban Islam, you cannot ban the ideas of Hizb ut-Tahrir. And yeah, unless the government bans Islam, which I don't support, or at least restricts some Islamic immigration, you cannot ban the ideas of Hizb ut-Tahrir.